Welcome to the Practicing Drummer podcast. My name is Craig, and in this episode, I've got a conversation with Eliza Salem from February of 2026. Eliza's pretty young, but already making a name for herself on the scene, so I thought it would be a good idea to have her on so we could cover everything from high school and college to starting to build a career. I had fun prepping for this one because Eliza plays with a lot of artists that weren't really on my radar, so I discovered a lot of new music that I know I'll keep following. Oh, speaking of which, after we spoke, Eliza and I realized that we didn't mention the bass player for her band, Careful in the Sun, so I wanted to do that now. The bass player is Anna Abendolo. As always, I'll link to everything in the show notes and on the blog at practicingdrummer.com. And with that, let's get right into it with Eliza Salem. Hey, Eliza, thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to, I guess, meet virtually. Although I forget if we met.
Yeah, we did.
In person for a second at Jazz Central.
Yeah, we did when you were here in Minneapolis. You were at Jazz Central with Sophia Kikofol.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a cool gig. Oh gosh, I forget the other musicians. Is it Jayla Chi?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jayla Chi on bass and Esteban Castro on piano.
Yeah, that was a super cool gig, and I got access to a recording of that gig too the other day, so I could rewatch it and remind myself of the whole deal.
Wow, I might need a reminder of how that went.
Oh, it was cool. Yeah, I'll send it to you for sure. But yeah, that was a cool gig, and we did talk for just a few minutes. I think you showed me a new cymbal that you picked up when you were on tour, some weird brand.
Oh yeah, wow, you have a much better memory than me. I did have a cymbal that I picked up from Steeble Drum Shop in Cleveland, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's a 18-inch dark crash. And the name of the brand is called Trachean, but the name of the cymbal is Black Shadow.
Oh, right.
Is kind of like dark and corny, which I like.
Yeah.
Like not corny, but it's got this like
mystique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So was that when you were in Cleveland? I saw on YouTube there's a video of you with Marta Sanchez.
I was there with Marta, and then I also played at the Bop Stop on a different tour with this bass player, Max Johnson, who I've toured with a bunch in the last year.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I like that venue a lot. I've only been there once, but it's cool. It's super nice.
Yeah, it's a really nice place to hit on tour because they just take really good care of you, and they have really great backline. The drums there are, I think it's a Cleveland-based brand called Fortune, I believe. And it's really fun to play those drums, and it's always nice when you don't have to think about the instrument itself and you can kind of just play music.
Yeah. Do you, I know we were talking a little bit about this before we officially started, so let's just hit it now. I'm curious, when you tour and you're flying, what cymbal case do you use? Do you just take a bag and check it, or you keep it with you, or?
Yeah, I really would like to transition soon into using well, it's not that I would like to do this, because the idea of checking a bag of cymbals is the most terrifying thing ever.
Yes.
But I do usually carry my cymbals in just my regular backpack cymbal case, because I can almost always fit it overhead or under the seat in front. And if those don't work, usually they're nice enough to let me throw it in the closet. Or I've never had any trouble getting my cymbals on the plane, which I feel like is kind of rare. So trying to keep that good luck going. But it's also very limiting, because then I have this heavy thing on my back and I can't really carry much more than that. I have to kind of like plan out, even in my day-to-day life, like, okay, if I'm carrying my cymbals and I have to walk 10 minutes from the train to the venue or wherever, like I have to really plan in advance how much other stuff I'm carrying with me, because it just gets so heavy.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the stuff we were talking about before we started recording, like with core strength and back strength, like trying to make sure I don't injure myself just trying to get to the gig or get on the plane or something.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I think about that a lot. And yeah, the reason this came up is because I was telling you I have a new cymbal case coming because I'm older
mhm,
than you. So I definitely am thinking about preserving my arms and not injuring my forearms and stuff carrying cymbals around.
mhm.
So I ordered a kind of a trolley bag.
I've seen people create like makeshift trolleys
Oh,
for
yeah.
their cymbal bags with like grocery carts and stuff, and I need to just do it. I think I've just been kind of avoiding it because the idea of lugging something around with my hand and having one hand out of commission is bothersome to me, but it's gonna have to happen eventually. So
Yeah. What's the biggest cymbal that you tour with? Is it a 22?
I've never really played on anything bigger than a 20-inch,
Oh, okay.
and these days I kind of purposely keep it that way because the 20-inch bags are just so much easier to fit places and they're just lighter
That
for the
makes
most
sense.
part. And yeah, I think I'm like, how can I keep this as like functional as possible while also finding the sound that I want? And so far I've never like encountered a 21 or 22-inch cymbal that I'm like, oh, I have to play this.
Yeah.
I need to have this. I think the size usually just deters me. And I'm like, it's probably great. It probably sounds awesome, but I don't need it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's I'm happy with just the setup that I have.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool. Yeah. And the 20 makes a lot of sense for keeping it
mhm.
compact on planes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into it here. I don't quite know exactly how to get in because I have questions about your current playing. I'm really into your playing and your
Thank
style of
you.
playing, so I want to get to that. But I think before we do that, can we just go back a little bit? I don't want to dwell too much on it, but I do want to know how you started playing jazz drums specifically, and then how that journey was. Because I understand you started in school, like a lot of us did, jazz band.
Mhm.
And can you talk about that a little bit and how that blossomed into the more modern style that you got into in college?
Totally. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll rewind a bit. I played piano growing up and a little bit of clarinet in elementary school. And I just didn't really, I was a young child. So it's hard to like really, I think, get excited about certain things if you're not already really into them when
Hmm.
you're a kid. But I was going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and I was like, I don't wanna play clarinet, don't wanna play piano, but my parents were very insistent on the fact that I had to stay in band class in school, which, I mean, looking back now, I'm eternally grateful for that, them setting that strict rule, like, "No, you can't quit band class, like, you have to be part of music class in some way in school." And I guess this is such a common trope for most drummers, but I guess I was just always tapping on stuff and banging on things.
Yeah.
And so my dad, I think, was the one who suggested that I play drums in my school band. And, at the time, it was kind of easy to give an 11-year-old a pair of sticks and be like, all right, now you're in the percussion section.
Yes.
Go learn how to do that.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I did, and it was like classical percussion at first, so like snare drum, concert bass drum, etc., all these individual instruments, and I was just not interested in that. I had I had dreams. I wanted to like kind of just like rock out more and like really like jam in a way that I couldn't do in my 6th grade concert band.
Yeah.
And I always thought drummers were so cool. I can't think of like the first drummer or person that made me want to play drums, but I just remember just the idea of it seemed really cool to me. So I knew that my middle school had a extracurricular jazz band. It was like once a week after school, and that was where you could play drum set, like the full kit, and not just different percussion
Yeah.
instruments. So I think my older sister played flute in the jazz band. So I was like, "Great, let me see if I can join this jazz band." And I bought like one of those like Hal Leonard beginner instrument books, like beginner drum set, and there was just a book with like basic rock groove number 1, like
Yes.
whatever. And I could read music already at the time. So I just like looked at this pattern, deciphered the coordination of it in my head,
Oh,
and I
cool.
just kind of showed up in the audition for the it was a very informal audition. I just showed up and I just like played this beat, I guess, and I think that was good enough. They were like, "Great, you have basic
Yeah.
coordination, you can do it." So I joined my middle school jazz band. So that was when I really first started playing drum set, and then going into high school, I was in the jazz band there, and the music suddenly got much harder, and reading the charts became much more difficult because we were playing. I think in middle school, we were kind of doing very like more beginner stuff. A lot of the drum grooves were written out, so I could read those.
Oh,
But then in
yeah.
high school, they were giving us these charts that were a typical big band chart that you would see where it's a lot of maybe like hits
Yeah.
and slashes, and then it just says like play time or whatever.
Yeah, you have to interpret it and
Mhm.
come up with the part. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was just so in over my head, and I was so anxious to like start playing in that way because I had never kind of explored interpreting music in that way. But I had a really good friend at the time who was also in the jazz band, and she was doing this summer jazz camp that was run by this saxophonist in the DC area where I'm from originally. His name is Paul Carr, and he runs this summer jazz camp and a year-round, like, jazz orchestra or big band. So I signed up for the summer camp, and I just remember, like, the vibe was so fun. Like, I was doing it with my friends, and the counselors were so nice. A lot of a lot of the counselors that I worked with there are now, like, my peers on the scene
Oh,
here.
cool.
Like, if you know, Aaron Sieber, he's a drummer
Oh, yeah.
in New York. He was, like, my first drum teacher kind of, and, Max Light, this amazing guitarist, and Alex
Yeah.
Hamburger, who's a flutist and vocalist. So all these, incredible counselors and people who just made it really fun. And then, I started just learning how to play this music just from then on. I heard, kind of my first real records when I was in that space and during that time, and I think just from there the rest was kind of history. Like I remember going back to school after that summer, and it was just such a stark contrast from how I had felt in the jazz band the year before. Like I was so anxious and timid before, and then after that I was like, give me those charts. Let's read them. Let's play. So yeah, it had a really just being in an educational setting like that. That was for me it was really fun and engaging, and I learned so much. So that really just made such a huge difference for me.
So during that time, what were you doing as far as practicing and, working on and listening? Did you get into rudiments or going through coordination books, or was it more about the hands-on experience?
The hands-on experience was, I think, the biggest thing for me because I just wanted to do it even though I didn't always know how to do it or what to do it. I just remember, at the end of camp every day, they would have students go up and perform, and I was always like hoping to get chosen to play or like wanting to raise my hand to be the first one to get called to go play. So I think just the feeling of playing music with other people, even though we were like 13, 14 at the time, it didn't matter. I was like addicted to that feeling of like truly jamming, like the
Yeah.
spirit of the jam. And then from there I started studying privately. So I didn't really have too much like one-on-one private instruction before that. I think maybe I took a couple months of drum lessons at like a guitar center type thing. But
Okay.
it wasn't very I don't really remember much from it. I don't think I enjoyed it that much. But then after having this experience, I was really excited to study privately. And I had this amazing teacher back home named Chris Allen. And he's from Tasmania in Australia. And
Mm.
he somehow found his way to Montgomery County, Maryland, and was an educator at a high school in the county. And he taught the big band for, I think, a few decades there. But he was my drum teacher, and he was just we got along really well, and his style of teaching was so good for me because it wasn't just, okay, practice your rudiments, practice this page out of the syncopation book. Obviously, we did some of that, but I think a lot of our lessons were him just going on YouTube and kind of like nerding out over stuff and showing me what he liked
Mm,
and kind of teaching me how to also be curious about what I liked. And he taught me a lot of these like very simple, I guess. I mean, simple in quotes because they're deceptively simple. They're actually quite hard, but just these, basic warm up routines that incorporate all four limbs and incorporate some rudiments. Trying to think what else we did. We worked on sight reading a lot. But yeah, I don't think it was really until college that I started having a very strict practice routine and
okay.
started really diving into rudiments and coordination in a much more serious way. I think in high school it was all just like, "Oh, great, like now I can do this. Oh,
Yeah.
cool, now I can do this." And then in college it was like, "Oh, I actually can't do anything and it's time to go back to basics and
Okay.
and and start over."
Yeah, and I want to talk about some of that, but I'm really curious about what music you were into. Being into playing the
Mhm.
drums is one thing, but you were clearly drawn to make music with other people. So what was the music that you were really interested in and listening to and maybe playing along with?
My first memory of hearing something and just like instantly being drawn to it and wanting to investigate it and figure it out and play it was Lazy Bird off of Blue Train.
Oh, okay.
It's like kind of a hard song. Like I don't really know how that even came up, but I think it was just one of those days at, this music camp and we were talking about this song and we were playing it and I was like, "Oh, like playing the swing beat at this tempo is fun." Like I don't even know this song. I don't even know what I'm doing, but whatever we're doing right now is really fun. And so I went home and I listened to it and I had Blue Train on repeat. So that was one of the first records. So like
That's a good
Moment's
one.
Notice, yeah, all of that stuff just, it was like my hype music. I, like, got really excited listening to it, and then also, those early, like, first quintet, Miles Davis quintet, those Columbia recordings, so there's, like, the Relaxin' with the Miles Davis
Yes.
quintet, Workin', that series of records. That was another, just a sound that really attracted me. Yeah, I think Relaxin' and Workin' were the 2 that I listened to the most. Yeah, I think it was PC, Paul Chambers, and Philly Joe Jones. And so, yeah, from there I was like, "Oh, okay, so there's people that are doing this, like, who are they? How are they doing it? Why are they so good at it?" And
And did you transcribe or play along, or what was that process like? Because it's one thing to hear Philly Joe. It's a whole other
yeah.
thing to try to play along with some of that stuff
Yeah.
when you're young.
I was mostly just listening. At the time, now I've kind of figured out like, okay, if I'm gonna play along to a recording, I have to be able to hear such and such. I have to be able to hear myself. And at the time, I had like, probably those cheap earbuds where you can't hear like any bass frequencies or
Yeah.
anything. So playing along was not. I don't think I did a lot of serious playing along at the time, but I just listened so much, and then eventually at some point I must have started playing along to those records. I just don't remember exactly when that transition started. Maybe I got a pair of good headphones at some point, but I didn't really do I didn't learn, or not that I didn't learn, but I didn't start transcribing until I got to college. And I have transcribed, I think it was the trades, Philly Joe's trades on 4.
Oh, okay.
Um, I did that at one point, and that was my first, like, Philly Joe language, working it out myself, trying to put it to paper, like, visualizing what that all sounds like and how, just the genius of not simplicity in the like, you know, simple in the way that it's just like he could just have one idea and just develop it over the course of like this whole chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And also very technically challenging. Like I think he does a lot of these things that sound like a 6-stroke roll with like doubles in there, but they're actually all single strokes. I think I could be wrong, but it appears to me that they're actually all single strokes with like various accents displaced throughout. And it's so much harder to do that with the single stroke than with the double stroke,
Oh,
for
yeah.
me at least. And so it was like, all right, all this stuff that I've been listening to, now we're really doing like our research, and the investigation goes even deeper and deeper with every note.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And with every drummer you get into, every
Mhm.
bass player you start to notice.
Mhm.
I've heard you mention, of course, like Blakey and Tony and Elvin,
Mhm.
and you just talked about Philly Joe, but do you remember any specifics about when you heard somebody that you got obsessed with and wanted to transcribe or listen to more?
I think Tony Williams was I think the thing that first this is so like funny, but I think just finding out that he was like my age essentially when he started doing, making these recordings and stuff just blew my mind, because I was like, what do you mean he's 17 years old? Like
Yeah.
how is that possible actually? Because I'm 16 years old and I can't even I can't even come close to anything that's happening here. So that, if anything, like out of out of awe and perhaps even like a competitive spirit, because I was always very competitive growing up. Who knows where that stemmed from? Maybe like having siblings, maybe being like in many of these music spaces, like being the only person playing drums who wasn't a guy. Like
Yeah.
I just always had this feeling of like, oh, you can do that? Like, well, now I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna do it better. So just like finding out that Tony Williams was, you know, the same age as me when he was playing with Miles was just incredible, and also like kind of a wake up call. I was like, oh, okay, so maybe I should figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like, yeah, I remember hearing that too for the first time, and it was very inspiring,
mhm.
in that,
And
you
demoralizing.
and demoralizing. Yes, yes, that's exactly it. So how did you, when you got into Tony, I mean, that's a lifetime of study right there, if you really
Mhm.
want to dig into Tony. But, after coming from listening to Philly Joe and those Miles records, and then hearing Tony with Miles, like, could you hear that right away and understand it? Or what was your way into sort of dissecting that?
I
Or,
think I was taken aback a bit at first
yeah,
at the someone like Philly Joe, who is coming out of this in within the lineage of this music, coming out of a more, I guess, traditional style, even though I guess there's connotations from that I don't necessarily even that make me hesitate to use that word, because he was a pioneer. He wasn't, a traditionalist. They were all pioneers. But just the difference in how they would like comp, and how Philly Joe's playing always felt like so in control, like calm, just very it wasn't perfect, but it was also like perfect. And
yes,
then
so articulate. Like the
yes,
ideas were
exactly.
so clean.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then hearing Tony play, I was kind of like, this is like wild. Like he's kind of just like unleashing this um it seemed to me at the time, I don't know, maybe I am no expert at all in this. These are all just, the opinions that I've formed over years of having listened to it and tried to understand it, but it seemed like he was just going for stuff in a way that felt like it still had the articulation there, and the spirit was there for both of them. But with Tony, it kind of felt like he was just like, I don't know, it surprised me. So much of his playing especially over time, from those early recordings, and then you go through the timeline and hear second, with the second quintet, stuff like that, that I was just like, why did he play that there? And why is it so, that's not how they teach you to necessarily play. Like,
Yes.
what happened to just playing the ride cymbal and comping? Like, the whole thing just becomes like the whole instrument, like the function of each part of the drum set. To me, it felt like it started to have a new meaning, because I was taught, and this is not to say that it was people were trying to be rigid about it, but when you teach beginners how to play this style of music, it's like you got to keep your ride cymbal
Yeah.
consistent, keep your hi-hat consistent. And then I was like, well, he is doing that, but he's also, it seems like he's comping with all of those things at the same time. And then it felt so like uninhibited. Is that the word I'm thinking of? It didn't feel like he was constrained at all by any rules. And he had obviously learned and heard from other drummers before, and it kind of felt like he was like, okay, cool. Now I'm just gonna do my thing. And I think that's what I loved so much about his playing, and also what intimidated me so much but intrigued me at the same time, because he was just kind of reinventing, as so many of these drummers were doing. It's almost like impossible to just focus on one person, because it's
Yeah,
like
I
he was
know.
doing
I
that
know.
and someone else was doing that at the same time. But yeah, it was just adding more layers to how you could approach this instrument, which it's almost overwhelming, like the possibilities. There's so many instruments within the drum set, like the toms and the
Yeah.
snare and the bass drum cymbals. And there's so many different sounds that you can get out of every single one of those instruments. There's a million different combinations
Yeah.
for coordination and things to play in unison. And yeah, I think that just reminded me of something that my drum teacher taught me when I was, or something he shared with me when I was in high school, was that um apparently Tony Williams was very he took like playing in unison very seriously, and it didn't matter if you could play all these crazy licks. I think he would just, if you took a lesson with him, and maybe, people out there who have taken lessons with Tony Williams can confirm or deny this, but apparently he would just start with making you play all four limbs in unison together, and he would just make you do that until there were no more flams or something, some version of that,
Well, yeah, and there's
perhaps.
a classic Max Roach exercise like that too that maybe you've heard about, playing all limbs in unison, but then using one limb at a time, dynamically going up and down while keeping everything else the same.
Mhm.
It's very challenging. It's very
Yeah.
beneficial to work on.
Yeah. Whoever thought that just playing at the same time would be so much harder than, well, not, maybe not harder, but just as challenging as playing things, in more of
Yeah.
a linear way.
Well, and I want to talk more about your playing and specifically how it grew out of playing more traditionally and then seemed to blossom after discovering
Mhm.
Tony Williams. One question I have before we move on is, when you were in high school, junior high and high school, were you practicing a lot at home?
I was not a great student. I did not practice that much, to be honest. I did a lot of playing just in general. So
Mm-hmm.
I was getting my hands on the kit a lot, but I was not disciplined at all. And that was something that I really had to teach myself going into college,
Okay.
because I mean, I've always had a hard time just focusing on one task for a long time, and having that very disciplined, like concentrated time dedicated to the instrument. But I think in middle and high school I was not that disciplined. And so yeah, getting to college and realizing that I didn't actually know how to play any rudiments
Mm,
really. Like I knew, in theory, this is how you play a flam, this is a
yeah.
paradiddle. But when you get down to you put it under the microscope, my foundation was non-existent. So I had to really get into that stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about college a little bit. Number one, I'm just curious how you chose Michigan, since you were already out on the East Coast and there are so many great schools out there that you could have gone to. I mean,
Yeah,
not that Michigan's not great. It is. I know people that are there.
But it does, even when I tell people that, saying it out loud does feel kind of like random, like
Mhm.
of all the places, just moving to the Midwest suddenly. But how did I end up Michigan? Well, I think scholarship money was the biggest deciding factor.
Yeah, that's
Um,
big.
yeah, so that was a huge part in it, and also I had family living in Ann Arbor, that was a draw as well. I had a friend, a very close friend at the time who went through the same jazz camp as I did, who was a year ahead of me, who went to Michigan for music, and so that was, I think, the first thing to put it on my radar in terms of, like, music school. But I met my drum teacher who his name was Michael Gould. I met him, I guess, at my audition and took a lesson with him, and, we got along really well, and he was just a really great educator, and, yeah, I had a great experience with him, and then I think another thing was the fact that, Ellen Rowe, who I don't know if you know her, but she's a pianist and composer, arranger, educator. She was the head of the department at the time at Michigan, and she was the first woman to be the director of any major jazz department in the country, potentially in the world. I don't know exactly the statistics on that, but she was very um, enthusiastic about me coming. She really made an effort to try to get younger women involved in the program. And so at the time that had a pretty big impact on me. And then all those factors combined, I think I got admitted to the School of Liberal Arts at Michigan. I had very good grades in high school, so
Nice.
just all of that stuff combined, it just worked out that way. And I initially went in as a dual degree because I think the deal that I had kind of struck up with my family was like, if I'm going to go to music school, I will also study something that is not music for, just
Or safety net
to
or
be
yeah.
safe. And I think going into it, I kind of knew deep down that there was nothing else that I was interested in dedicating that amount of time and study to. And then I think my sophomore year, I was like, look, I don't have any interest in doing this other degree. Like I want to do music. Music is going to be what I do with my life. That is going to be my career. Period. End of story. And I think they begrudgingly agreed to it, and the rest, it worked out. I got my music degree, and here I am making a career out of it.
It's so cool. So can you talk about your time studying at college a little bit? What did
Mhm.
you start getting into? And it sounds like you got humbled a little bit. You got there and you were like, oh,
Mhm.
yikes, I don't know my rudiments and blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. So how
Yeah.
was that transition for you? And what did you end up really focusing hard on to become the player you are today?
To be honest, I have a very hard time remembering those early years in college because the pandemic happened my junior year.
Oh, yeah, I forget
So,
about that with
yeah,
you younger
that little thing.
musicians. Yes, yes.
So, it is honestly kind of a blur. So I had 2 drum teachers. One was Michael Gould and the other one was named Sean Dobbins, and they were both incredible musicians, incredible drummers. They had, I think, pretty different approaches musically because Michael Gould had studied classical percussion his whole life and was an amazing drum set player, but also played percussion. And so he was coming from he was the first person to helped me get my hands really together in that way. And my drum teacher in high school had introduced the rudimental ritual to me by Alan Dawson,
Mm-hmm.
but Michael Gould was the one who started kind of like enforcing that, showing me Charlie Wilcoxon, All American. What's the name of that book? I know that you know what I'm talking about, but I
Oh,
can't.
yeah, there's rudimental swing solos and then All American Drummer with the
That one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
150. Yeah.
So he showed me that, and that was the first time I had done any kind of snare drum etudes, or calling them etudes doesn't even really feel, because they're not, they were like excerpts on phrasing and melodic playing and, all that stuff. And then my other drum teacher, so I would kind of switch off semester by semester. Sean Dobbins was, I guess, coming from a more straight ahead playing perspective. I don't want to necessarily put him in that box, but the stuff that we focused on was very much grounded in that style. And when I would hear him play with his group, it was coming out of that tradition as well. But we've just worked so much on our beat and like the pulse when we're playing swing, and the ride cymbal beat, and just he showed me tons of great records. I think through him I discovered Gregory Hutchinson and just his playing in general, especially with Roy Hargrove and Rodney Whitaker, and just hearing a drummer like that play. I was listening to Roy Hargrove's live record of Kindred
Oh,
Souls
yeah, yeah.
on repeat all the time. And there's another record that this pianist, who's actually based in Michigan, named Rick Rowe, he did this record called, I think, Monk's Mood is the name of the record. It's not available on streaming or anything. I
Huh.
think I used to listen to it just like a 50-minute long YouTube video where it would just play the record
Oh,
down.
interesting.
But
Okay.
yeah, and I would just put these records on and just only play the ride cymbal pattern and nothing else.
Oh, okay.
And that, I think, just really was helpful in developing my own sense of time and my own beat, obviously being influenced by these musicians, but I have vivid memories of that. And he also would make me go back and record myself playing every week, and then we would listen to it in the lesson and dissect it.
Like record yourself in the practice room or playing with other people or?
Playing with other
Oh,
people.
okay.
Yeah. So any sessions or gigs, or even if it was like if I was playing in the pit for like a musical theater thing at the school, like just any playing scenario, we would listen to it and dissect it. And he would ask me to write down what I liked about it or what I noticed about it, and things that I thought could be improved upon or things that I wanted to work on. And that's actually been such a helpful tool. And I do the same thing with my students when they play. I don't ask them to record because most of them are young these days and they don't get to play with people a lot of the times. But I'll just have them play and then ask them, okay, so what did you think?
Hmm.
How did you feel about that? What did you like? What did you think could be improved upon? And I feel like that's where a lot of the self-reflection and growth can happen, when you become aware of yourself
Oh,
and
yeah.
your own playing.
Do you remember any big aha moments that came from recording yourself and thinking about it?
I think talking about time, like the beat and where I was in the beat,
Mm.
whether it was ahead or behind, and how feathering the bass drum and playing hi-hat affected that so much. Because I spent all this time working on my ride cymbal beat, but then if we would listen to this recording and it was like, okay, so your ride cymbal beat is fine, great, whatever. But now let's look at the feet, like what's happening there, and why does it feel like you're pushing so much, or why does it feel like you're not with the bass player, even though technically you're playing in time.
Mm.
And there's not a right way to do it that I learned, or a wrong way to do it that I learned, but I think just, starting to think about it as more than just, okay, well, I'm playing the swing beat, so I
Yeah.
have to feather the bass drum and I have to play hi-hat on 2 and 4. But what is that actually doing to the groove? And how is that affecting the sound of everything? Because, I think just sound is so important, and it was something that I didn't think too much about
Yeah.
when I was younger. I was just like, okay, this is just what I sound like.
Mm.
And then growing older, it was coming to terms with the fact that I could change my sound in any given scenario, and I can manipulate sound in ways that completely change what the music sounds like in our ears, but also how it feels in our bodies when we're playing it. So if
Mm.
my hi-hat is really loud, or if my hi-hat is really quiet, if my hi-hat is, I'm not closing it all the way, if it's kind of got like there's like some decay in the two hats coming together,
Mm-hmm.
or if my kick pedal is just hitting the head of the drum and staying there, like if I'm pressing my foot down and it's not rebounding, or if I'm playing like an open stroke where it's coming back off the head of the drum, how does that affect the sound, and how does that affect the beat and the groove and everything?
And did you work a lot with metronome when you were in college and focusing on some of this stuff? Because your time is so good.
Thank you. I started taking the metronome very seriously at that time because I would, learn how to play a thing. For example, I would learn Wilcoxon solo number 1, and I would play it and I would be like, great, this is, I'm playing the solo, I'm playing the accents, it sounds fine, right? And then someone brought up the idea of putting the metronome on. I think they had taken a lesson with maybe Kenny Washington or something, and we're talking about this, but putting the metronome on like 30 BPM. And I would do that and just be hit with this awful realization that I could only play time when it was between like 100 and 280 BPM. And
Yeah.
anything else was just, I was guessing everything. So
Uh-huh.
that was when I really started to take the metronome seriously, and then also try different ways of, manipulating where you put the click. So
Mm.
playing uh 200 BPM, but setting the metronome to 50 BPM
Yeah. Yeah.
and trying to feel the space in there, or just putting the click on beat 4 every 2 bars or something like that. Just these exercises to try and challenge myself to see how good my time actually is.
Yeah.
And in doing so and practicing rudiments and specifically Wilcoxon and the rudimental ritual, because I think those are the 2 things that have stuck with me for as long as I can remember now. Upon having discovered them, my hands got so much stronger, and I had so much more dexterity in my technical playing as a result of doing that. And also doing all of that with the knowledge and trying to remind myself that there is something musical about this, but also when I'm in a scenario, when I'm actually playing with people, it's not going to be the same. The time isn't going to feel like a metronome, and that's okay. Just the radical acceptance of all of those things, like committing to the metronome when you're practicing with it, and trusting your internal metronome and the people around you use internal metronomes when you're playing with them as
Yeah.
well.
Well, let's get into a topic that I know you and I have been texting about a little bit
Mm-hmm.
that has to do with playing time, but playing more in this. I don't even really know exactly how to define it, but almost like a broken time, more of kind of modern playing,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't play a lot in that traditional style where it's the ride pattern, feathering. I think I saw
Mm-hmm.
maybe one video you did something with Hannah Marks where you were doing sort of like a jazz appreciation thing, and it was playing like more traditional stuff, but most of the other playing that I've seen and heard from you is very modern.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you can help me sort of understand your approach to that, because your time is so solid, and it's almost as though you're just like coloring and texturing the music while you're playing, and there's such a good flow. And even when you solo, then you keep that. It doesn't ever become drum time. It's
Hmm.
still like you're still there, just helping to paint and color the music. And when did you get into that type of playing, and how did you work on it? And I know this is a long, rambling question, but I'm also curious with regard to how strong your time and flow is when playing like that. What's going on with you internally, since you're not,
Hmm.
hanging on to the ride cymbal or 2 and 4 on the hi-hat?
I mean, that's
It's a tough
like,
question.
it is a tough question, and like I said, I tried to type out an answer, and I spent so long just like writing something and then deleting it because I was like, well, that's not really what I mean, and that's not. So
Ah,
I think
yeah, yeah.
talking about it is much easier, but I think exactly the language that you're using, like coloring, treating it like a canvas, whatever, the entire set that you're doing, or just the song, however big or small you want to view it. But the whole thing is just a canvas, and we're
Mm-hmm.
just painting it literally with like our brushes and sticks and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
right.
that is absolutely something that I'm thinking about in those exact words. I think coloring and adding texture to something. I'm trying to pinpoint like when I started kind of transitioning from a more straight ahead approach to that, because I was taught the music from this more straight ahead tradition, and that was how I played for a long time. I think I just kind of wanted to explore beyond just this one way to play this kind of music, because like we talked about someone like Tony, like how he kept the pulse and the beat and the really the urgency and the energy was there, but he wasn't always just playing just the ride cymbal. But when he would just play the ride cymbal, it was like exactly what needed to happen in that moment. Or someone like Paul Motion, who doesn't,
Mm.
the times and the records that I hear him playing on, he's just so much more expressive with it, and it's not that he's not playing in time, but he's able to let go of I think it almost felt like for a while it started feeling like, well, I need to play it this way even though I want to do this other thing. Like, I need to keep this going, otherwise it's the music is going to suffer as a result. And then I just learned that I that's just not true. And I was fortunate enough to get to study with Robert Hurst a little bit because he taught at my school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I took lessons with him right before the pandemic hit. And I think we only did like 2 or 3 months of lessons, but I think the thing that I remember taking away from in those lessons is we would play together, and he would just be like, you can be doing more, like you can be interacting more. And then we would listen a little bit to like Tane and hear how he was interacting. And I was like, oh geez, like this guy is just constantly playing. And so we would play again, we would play, a blues, and then it would be over and he would be like, yeah, you can still even be doing more. And the whole lesson, like I remember a whole lesson we were just playing, and it was just every single time I was like, I can't possibly play any, like I've reached the limit of how much I can interact
Mm-hmm.
with someone, especially in a duo bass drum setting. And every time he would be like, yeah, cool, but like what if you did even more? And that wasn't necessarily to make me like a maximalist player or anything, but I think it was just challenging me to be so focused on listening and engaging with the music, and getting away from the habit of just playing time and comping with your left hand and occasionally your bass drum
Mm-hmm.
and giving a couple hits here and there, like just because that formula works so well and it sounds so good when some people do it, but there's also so many other like I said before, like we got one, two, three, four, five drums occasionally, sometimes four, five drums in front of you, three or four cymbals. Like that's like a whole orchestra. Like how are you going to orchestrate something in the moment that doesn't ever lose the groove or the pulse, unless, there's times when the music calls for that too,
Sure.
but just in these moments where we're practicing, like, how am I going to interact without losing the time, losing the pulse, and keeping the feeling of, that uplifting feeling that swing and that the swing pattern has, but like being musical and super intentional about all the choices that you're making, while at the same time letting go of any preconceived notions on how to play or any expectations for where the music is supposed to go. And
Mm.
just, yeah, another instance of like radical acceptance and letting go. And then I think hearing, like you mentioned J.K. Kim in the text, and
Oh, yeah,
he
yeah.
was someone that I heard before I lived in New York, but I would come visit, and I heard people like him or Connor Parks. Trying to think who else. Just all these drummers who were closer to my age, but still a bit older than me, and they were doing that so effortlessly, and it
Mhm.
just felt like they were just playing like water
Yes.
almost.
Oh, it's
And I
interesting, yeah.
was, yeah, I wanted to be able to sound like I was playing water too.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's
When you sort of had this realization and desire to get out of the safer way you're used to playing, was that something you practiced and figured out a way to challenge yourself, or was it something you had like gigs or friends you played with where there was a safe space to just do that more often?
definitely, in the practice room. I used to play along to Eric Harlan's drumming a lot, because I don't necessarily want to say he's like the guy who started this way of playing, because I think there's so many things coming in that there's not one person or one year or record that
Yeah.
started this thing, but he's the first person that I think I heard on recorded music, with Kurt Rosenwinkel or
Mm.
Walter Smith III. I just heard him playing in that way, and so I was fascinated by it. I used to play along with Star of Jupiter. I think that's the name of the Kurt Rosenwinkel record, and like Walter Smith live in Paris. Yeah, I used to just play along to those and just kind of let the ideas flow. And most of the time, it sounded really bad. Like, I would record myself sometimes and listen back, and I would just be like, "Oh my god, like, this is that's not even close to what they sound like." And
Mm.
also, it was really loud, because at times that style of playing can get super dense, and if you don't have the control,
Yeah.
the stick control, it can just start to sound like really, yeah, really loud and uncontrolled. But yeah, I would just play along a lot, and then also playing sessions with people where I knew it would be an okay time and place to go for stuff and not have to worry about, treating the music as if, with the same integrity that I would on a gig, but also knowing that it is okay to try stuff and for it not to come out the way that you want, which is also, I think, the gig is just as an appropriate place to do that. But I think when I first moved to New York, most of the gigs that I was doing were less of the creative spirit and more of a like playing tunes for this restaurant or whatever,
Oh, sure,
playing
sure.
background music for tips, whatever. That was
Mhm.
just how just kind of started getting more gigs, was doing stuff like that, which I think is pretty common.
Yeah.
And in those settings, it's not necessarily encouraged to go for your stuff, you're
Right,
like
right.
playing brushes on a snare drum and nothing else. So,
Well, since you just brought up New York, let's transition there. I'm curious then, I already asked you about why Michigan from
mhm,
the DC area, and what compelled you, well, I mean, I know why you moved to New York as a person interested in jazz music, but
mhm.
you specifically, how was that decision for you, and how was your landing in New York when you got there, and your friends and your scene and all
Mhm.
of that?
I moved to New York in 2021. So I graduated from school in 2021. It was still pandemic times. Like, we were all still wearing masks. The vaccine had just dropped. things were very much not
Yeah.
back to normal. And I had also had some very serious health problems towards the end of 2020 that were completely unrelated to COVID, but there was a few months where I was not really playing drums at all, and I was doing virtual lessons, and everything just kind of felt in limbo. And I had a very hard time envisioning a future in which things were back to normal, in which I was playing again and my health was back to normal and the world was back to normal, and it just all felt so heavy and dark. And then of course things did get better and my health situation got kind of figured out, and I was back to walking and playing regularly, and kind of I had never experienced such a visceral feeling of gratitude for music like I did at that time,
Mm.
which I'm going to call that like spring or summer of 2021. Um, because I hadn't, there was just nothing happening, and the world was on pause. Even when the world was on pause, I wasn't playing because of I had just so many health stuff going on that it affected my joints and my playing. So when I was starting to feel good again, there was like this newfound love for the music and for the instrument. And that was also around the time that I did this program called Ravinia. It takes place outside of Chicago. And at the time, it was for students at the collegiate level or in their undergrad or master's. And it was like you would get nominated by one of your teachers and they would review you. Like I didn't even really know that this was a thing. But they, I guess, would like find videos of you playing on the internet and whatnot. And then you would get invited to do this program.
And was this like a playing situation or?
It was a playing and composition thing.
Oh, interesting. Do you
Which
write as well, or was that your first exposure to that?
I do write. At the time I would never have considered myself a composer.
Uh-huh.
I still have a very hard time calling myself a composer. But at the time I was just like, what do you mean I'm doing this composing workshop? Like I don't know the first thing about anything. But I went to this workshop, and just the year that I was there just happened to be a great year for this workshop. I met some of my best friends there, people that I collaborate with still to this day. This guitar player, Emmanuel Michael,
Oh,
and
geez. Yes.
this pianist and songwriter, vocalist, Maya Karen. And they're two of my most like special, important, and ongoing collaborations still. Emmanuel and I are in a band with Maya called Careful in the Sun.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
then Emmanuel plays in my trio. But those connections and just that the workshop itself, like obviously it was great. It was with Rufus Reed and Steve Wilson and Billy Childs.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was of course amazing. But I think the thing that I really took away from it was like this community and this like love for my peers. And it was the first time most of us had played music in a long time with other people. So that was right before I moved to New York. And so I finished this workshop, and I was still just like seeing through the end of my lease in Michigan. And I was just like, I have to keep like pandemic, whatever's happening in the world, like I have to just play music. Like
Yeah.
this is what is keeping me alive and what's keeping me going, as it is for so many people. So I moved to New York, and yeah, I knew like 2 or 3 people when I moved there. I think a lot of people moved to New York for school or
Yeah,
for
right.
a job or something, and I just had some savings, and I moved into an apartment and just was like, I'm just gonna start over from here. And somehow I'm here now today, and it's really crazy looking back on that time. But I just knew that this is what I wanted to be doing, and the level at which I wanted to do that, I needed to move here in order
Yeah.
to be really, really pushed in that way. And it's been so challenging and so rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's amazing to see how much you're playing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing to me too. I'm like, what?
It, and before we move on, you mentioned Careful in the Sun. that group you have. And it wasn't until just a couple of days ago that I went and found it on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost messaged you because I was freaking out about how much I loved it. But then I
Oh,
stopped
yay.
myself because I didn't want to like burn this excitement in a text. I wanted to save it for this. But that song, Soft Alarm,
Ugh,
it's not even, I wouldn't call it
yeah.
jazz or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like indie pop
Yeah.
rock kind of thing. Oh, that is such an incredible song. And as someone who's older than you, it really
Mm-hmm.
like brought me back as sort of a throwback to the
Mm.
2000s.
Yeah. I mean, all intellectual property credit to Maya Karen, you know, it's just my peer, one of the most inspirational musicians and people that I've ever met. They formed this band back in 2021. So like right after I had moved to New York, they reached out to us and were just like, "Hey guys, I've had this idea for a band and I want you guys in it. Are you down?" And we've been a band ever since, and they write all the music, but we all just, we get together and they'll bring in a song, they'll have a little demo, and somehow everything just comes together so easily. Like we're all coming out of an upbringing of similar upbringings of, going to music school and coming out of the jazz tradition, but everyone in that group has so firmly found their own voice and their own way of playing, and I think it makes it so special for me to be able to collaborate with people who I find so inspiring and so how they have so much conviction in what they do, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want to be like them. Like I want to be like my friends when I grow up. But yeah, I love that band so much, and I'm so proud of all the music that we've created together and all the changes that we've gone through individually and as a group, musically, everything over the years. So yeah, it's a very special project.
And what about your own trio? Do you write for your trio, or
Hmm.
what's that repertoire like? And are you going to record an album or?
Yeah, I never really planned to have a group. Like it was never fully an intentional choice. Like I'm gonna put together this band. I think I just got asked to do a gig one day. I mean, and Emmanuel has always been one of my favorite musicians and just people to be around and play with. So I knew immediately that I wanted to have Emmanuel play with me, and then Jayla Chi, who was
Yeah.
playing with us at on that tour in Minnesota. Emmanuel introduced me to Jayla like the second day that I lived in New York. Like I think I just
Oh, wow.
moved to New York and I was like, "Hey Emmanuel, I live here. I don't know anyone. I have no plans. I don't have a job. What's up?" And Emmanuel was like, "I'm gonna go to this session. You should come." And I went and I met Jayla that night, and I've always loved her playing because she is, and I mean this in the best way possible. She's such an unconventional bass player, and I am always just like both on my toes when I'm playing with her, and then also so comfortable, like just trusting whatever is gonna happen, but also kind of like never knowing what's gonna come
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
And the two of them had known each other for a long time before too, and we're really close. And so I got asked to do this one-off gig. It was like a brunch gig at Ornithology, and that was the group that I had in mind. And I think Jayla didn't actually end up making that gig. But I had Rashawn Carter play that gig with us
Oh,
because
nice.
he's one of my biggest inspirations. But it was the first time I had kind of played I don't even think we really played. I think we played one of my tunes,
Hmm.
but that was the first time I had done that in New York. And so the next time that kind of opportunity came up, I wanted to try that band again, and Jayla was able to do it. I don't really remember when that next time was, but in the last almost 2 years, this venue called Close Up, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Oh, yeah. It's newer, right? It's,
Mhm.
is it in the Village or is it Lower Manhattan?
Yeah, it's in the Lower East Side.
Okay.
And so when that club opened up about a little under 2 years ago, Solomon, who is the owner and the booker, we had been friends and played together before. He asked me to put together a group and bring it. and I was freaking out because it was like a real gig at a real club, and it
Yeah.
was 2 sets, and I am such a nervous band leader. Like Jayla and Emmanuel will tell you, I am probably maybe a stressful band leader to work with. I don't know. Maybe they would give me a hard time for saying that too. But I think that I get very anxious before these things and I'm very much in my head. But we did this gig. It was fun. It was great. Solomon asked me to do another one a few months later. I did it again. And then over time, I think we just kind of been getting more reps in and playing a lot more frequently. And in the last 6 months to a year, I've been hosting like a late night set at Close Up,
Oh,
um,
nice.
like once a month or twice a month. And so we've gotten the chance to play together, and I've been writing more music for the band, but I am going to record this trio. All that to say,
Oh,
I'm
nice.
recording. We're doing a live recording actually next month at Close Up,
Oh, great.
which is exciting and also terrifying. Once again, the radical acceptance, letting
Yes.
go. I'm just going to let it happen and try not to worry too much about it. Jalen and Emmanuel sound so beautiful playing just in general, but
Yeah.
the music that I bring in, like every time I pull out the chart, my heart is pounding. I'm like, oh God, I don't know what's gonna happen. And then after it's over, I'm like, oh, that was great. I loved what just happened.
Yeah.
So
So can you talk to me a little bit more about this pre-gig anxiety?
mhm,
Um, this is the first time you've mentioned it, and you mentioned it when it's your own gig.
mhm.
Is that something you struggle with on all gigs? Or I don't even
No,
want to say struggle with, because, anxiety doesn't have to be a bad thing.
but it really is purely just band leading.
And is it because of your own expectations for having your name on something, or?
I think it's a combination of things. I think a lot of it is tied to my deep, insecurities as a composer. And yeah, I've been so comfortable being a side person for years now, and that was just something that I could just do without. I was never nervous to just play other people's music, but as soon as it comes to, me having to be the one presenting it, and that, like, not to get too personal, but I also think it's important to talk about these things and have it be normal and okay to talk about these things. I've discussed it a lot with like my therapist, where a lot of these insecurities stem from, and how it, could be tied into not being encouraged to do something from a young age, or being discouraged to do something from a young age. Like I don't I think doing this Ravinia workshop in Chicago was the first time that I had ever gotten any kind of, like, not even validation, but just like acknowledgement of myself as a composer. And for the longest time, I really, unfortunately, didn't think that I could be a composer. I knew that there were tons of amazing composers who were drummers out there, but I had kind of just accepted that I wasn't one of them, and that I
Mm,
was just going to be a really good side person. And so I just committed to that idea. And so being confronted with that and having to challenge that was, and still is, really hard to unlearn, this idea that of course I am good enough. I've played God knows how many hours of music. So what's another, 1 hour of leading a band?
yeah.
But it is so hard to work through that stuff sometimes. But we've been the last 4 or 5 months, I've been band leading regularly, at least once a month, which doesn't maybe not sound like that much, but to me it feels like a lot compared to how much I used to do it, which was almost never. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been getting like my reps in, and yeah, I guess it's like exposure therapy, and also
Yeah.
just practice. It's something you have to shed just like anything else.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And talking about kind of being brought into something and accepted like you were in the Ravinia program, I have to imagine that being part of the Jazz Next cohort in 2024, right?
Mhm.
I want to talk about
Yeah.
that too. I don't have a complete understanding of what that is. It's an apprenticeship program. Seems like is it started by Terry Lynn Carrington?
Yeah, she's the I hope this is the right term for her role. I believe she is the artistic director, or just the director of that program. It was something that she wanted to create in order to kind of change the landscape of the music as it's evolving and as society and culture is evolving. And I think something that I've heard her say before and bring up on multiple occasions is the idea of jazz without patriarchy.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people can interpret that as like more women in jazz or like equality for everyone in jazz, but there's so much more nuance to it, especially because it's the patriarchy is not just the idea of I mean it is, but it also isn't, this idea of men being in power, because there's so many ways that the patriarchy is tied into white supremacy, intersectionality, like all of these systems,
Yes, yes.
they're all connected. And so now we're getting to a point where we're all aware of it. We all know, or hopefully we all know that this exists, and that so much of what we're taught is under these constructs that these systems have put in place. Literally, in, for example, all jazz departments having predominantly old white men teachers, and then
Yeah.
figuratively, and how we see, we'll see a band, and it's like, does it ever cross anyone's mind that the band only has people that belong to a certain demographic or look a certain way or play a certain way?
Mm.
All of these things are interconnected. And so this idea of jazz without patriarchy and, the world without patriarchy as well. But this program, I think, was started to, Terry Lynn has mentioned how she's had so many people do so much for her over the years to help her get her where she is today. And that's not to say that she didn't do it on her own. Of course, she is one of my heroes and biggest inspirations as a musician and as an activist and person. But she was thinking, okay, what can I do to give back to the next generation? How can I ensure that, well, I'm a woman in jazz, so I'm exempt from this. Like, no, none of us are really exempt from doing any of this work. So just coming to terms with that, and she's just created this program that was meant to give younger artists who are in their mid 20s to mid 30s a platform to help them take their career to the next level of wherever that may be on their path. Because that's what mentors do for their mentees and their apprentices, like
Yeah.
they help them get from one stage to the next in life and in their careers and whatnot. So it is an apprenticeship program and a mentorship and a cohort and a grant. So it's all of these things
Amazing.
coming together. And the program is called Next Jazz Legacy. And I was fortunate enough to be an awardee for the third cohort. So I think they're now on to their fifth. They just concluded the fourth cohort year. So it's like spanning over a year. But the idea is that, the relationships that you make with your mentors and your peers during that year will last for the rest of your life, hopefully.
Is that where you met Nicole McCabe, the alto player?
Yeah. Well, we had met prior to that, but just like through Instagram, we had known each other, and I met her in LA once. But that was the first time that we got to, really start playing together and forming, a friendship and a musical relationship. And the same with everyone in that cohort. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone that's done that program, of course, but specifically the people that I got to work with are all so incredible, and we're all also so different. Like, I
Mm.
think that's kind of the challenge going into this, is like you're creating this cohort that's kind of also supposed to be a band,
Mm.
because we have gigs. And it's like, how are we going to make this work when we all have such different musical backgrounds? It's actually like insanely challenging to do that. But I love the people that I worked with in my cohort, and my mentors for that were Cindy Blackman
Oh,
and
wow.
Ambrose Akinmusiri, which they're two people that I've always admired,
Oh
and
yeah.
I mean, I've gotten the chance to talk to Cindy. We've kind of done stuff like this where we've done like Zoom sessions, which is reminding me that I should reach out to her. But we talked a lot about a lot of these same things because she also loved Tony Williams. She also
Sure.
studied the rudimental ritual, studied with Alan Dawson,
Yes. Yeah.
and that just reminded me of a amazing record that she showed me called Verses by Wallace Roney,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
Tony Williams is on it, but they play, I think, one of her compositions, and yeah, just a great record. And then with Ambrose, we haven't actually played together yet, but we've been in communication for the last 2-ish years. And one thing I really appreciate about him is that this apprenticeship, the idea is that you have one mentor who you have these sessions with, and then the apprenticeship where you play gigs with this band leader. So Cindy was my mentor, and then Ambrose was my who I was going to do my apprenticeship with. But I think the lines can get kind of blurred because it's just like, okay, hire this person for X number of gigs and then check that box. And I was hoping that it would be something a little more intentional and personal. Not that other people's haven't been, but I could see a path in which it would be really easy to just say, "Hey, I have this gig, you know, these 4 gigs in New York. Can you do these?" And then that's it. Apprenticeship is done and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted something more, just with a little more, yeah, I wanted to like create something and collaborate something together, and he's totally down for that. Again, we haven't done anything concrete yet with it. We're both doing a million different
Oh yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but we have ideas for collaboration, which I won't say too much because it hasn't happened yet. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I don't want to create any expectation on myself or anyone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been great just getting to talk to him a little bit and talk about music together, especially, both of these people who I've listened to for so long and never ever in a million years thought that it would be possible to have any kind of relationship with either of them, much less like a collaboration. Like still to this day, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure that you want to do this? But, that's a lot of the insecurity, and it's good to recognize that, I think, and also
Yeah.
to let it exist and then also to let it go.
Yeah, it's the reason I asked if the Jazz Next program is where you met Nicole McCabe is because I started hearing some of the singles she's been releasing from her
Mhm.
Color Theory album that's I think coming out maybe next
Very
week or the
soon.
week after, by the end of this month, February
Yeah,
2026. It sounds so good. I'm excited to hear the whole
thank you.
thing. Yeah.
I am too. She really just made it happen. She was like, "Hey guys, I want to record a record. I have these tunes. Let's do it." And it was we literally just did it. And
Did you record it out in New York or did you go
mhm.
to LA or?
Yeah, she was here for the Next Jazz Legacy cohort was playing at Winter Jazz Fest last year, so early 2025. And so the week that she was here, she was like, "Let's get a gig and then let's record for 2 days." So that was we had played one gig together on that music, as a band. So we played at Close Up on, like, a Monday night or a Sunday night, and then the next day, we went into the studio, and a lot of
Wow.
these tunes were being workshopped in real time, but Jason Moran was producing it, and he was so helpful in, guiding us towards, making a record because it's so different than just playing something live.
Oh
The
yeah.
energy is totally different, and how are we gonna make this work given that we're all still kind of learning the music? And I also, oh my gosh, Justin Brown came and played one song on the record because he was
Oh
also in
wow.
town for the festival, and, so he came and played one tune, and it was a tune that I had already been struggling with in terms of how to, like, compose a drum part for it or just, orchestrate a drum part, and that was the tune that he ended up recording, and he just did it like, I don't know if he had ever even played the tune before. He might have been sight reading it, I don't know,
Hmm.
but it was talk about a masterclass in effortlessness
Yeah.
and spontaneous composition, and also like he kind of like tuned the drums a little bit differently.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, like that sounds it's different than what I was doing, and it's
Yeah.
so cool. And that, I think we had one or two tunes to record still after that. And so it was nice having this new perspective just get thrown in there, and not just any perspective, like someone who, again, who's playing that I've been listening to for years. And especially with Ambrose's band, like I've gotten to see them play live at the Village Vanguard, and every time I see that band and anytime I see Justin Brown play, he's just one of those drummers where I'm just like, I can't even put into words like what you're doing, and I'm not gonna even try
Yeah.
to intellectualize it, because it's just whatever you're doing is just like, that's just the spirit, and there's nothing else to say about it
Yeah.
than just that.
Did you talk to him at that session at all? And did he give you any tips?
We talked like briefly. Like I think I was just like, I was trying to just be normal, and I
Yeah, I
was
suppose you were
like,
probably freaking
"Yeah,
out that he
sounds
was
great.
there
Like
and
you
yeah.
sound amazing." And I tried out his cymbals a little bit, and I left the tuning that he had done
Oh, okay.
for the last. I don't remember exactly what song we did after that. Maybe I'll hear it on the record, but
Yeah.
I just told him that I've always loved his playing, and he was so nice. He was so normal to me as well. He was just a really nice regular guy, and
Sure.
and I always love that, when I'm a little nervous to talk to someone, and then immediately upon interacting, I'm reminded that like, oh, they're a person, and
Yes.
they have a story just like I have a story, and it was great.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
your story's a good one, and I feel like we could talk more and go down different rabbit holes, but we
Mhm.
should probably start wrapping up, and then I have
Yeah.
a feeling we'll talk in the future. Your
Mhm.
career is so young right now, and
Yeah,
so hopefully we'll talk again in a couple years after you have an album or two under your belt.
definitely.
But before we wrap up, I think I gave you a heads up on this question that I'm trying to ask everybody. What album or albums have you listened to more than any other? And I always tell people it doesn't have to be jazz or anything super cool, but what comes to mind for you when you think of what's been in your ears the most?
So some of the records that I mentioned earlier, like
Yeah, Blue Train and the
Blue
Miles.
Train, yeah, Miles, Workin', Relaxin'. Well, a lot of the records that I've listened to more than any other come out of the umbrella or the lineage of jazz, or I guess just Black American music as a larger umbrella term. But I guess stuff stylistically in this one group, I would say, so yeah, like Blue Train, the Miles records, Cannonball, Adderley and Nancy Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
What else? What else? What else? Roy Hargrove
Oh,
of
sure, sure.
Kindred Souls. I mean, a lot of Roy Hargrove, but that's the one that sticks out the most to me. Betty Carter, Droppin' Things, which is another. I'm pretty sure that's Hutch playing drums on that one, but it's a live
Oh,
album, and
yeah,
that
okay.
that album changed changed my life and changed the way that I play. Jerry Allen, The Life of a Song, Dave Holland, Jack DeJohnette. Just one of those records that nothing else sounds like, and doesn't sound like anything else. Um, she's one of my biggest inspirations for sure. And then rest in peace, D'Angelo, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I mean, of course, his studio records like Brown Sugar and Voodoo like have always been some of my favorites, but his album Live at the Jazz Cafe in London is I've listened through that so many times. There's something like so raw about a live album.
Yes, yeah,
I
I
love I
agree.
love live albums.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, D'Angelo live at Jazz Cafe, Donny Hathaway live again.
Oh, yeah.
Um, what else? I had to write write some stuff down when you asked me, because I was
Yeah.
like, I need to keep this, condensed. Well, I listened to a ton of Stevie Wonder growing up as
Oh,
well.
cool. Okay.
Songs The Key of Life, Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay, last one I
Okay.
will say, one that came out in the last, I think, 2 years. Jeff Parker, The Way Out of Easy, is one of my favorite records that I've listened to recently.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one.
The band is called the ETA Quartet, I believe. And I think it was, I haven't spent much time in LA, so someone will know better than I do. But apparently this venue, ETA in Highland Park, what I've come to understand is this band would play there regularly, and the venue unfortunately closed. But I think this group is called the ETA Quartet, and it's Anna Butters, Josh Johnson, and Jay Belrose, and the whole record feels like a big, beautiful painting.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
like four tracks, and they're just, the sonic landscape is just like you're just on a journey.
Oh, awesome. I'll
I've
check
loved
that
listening
out.
to that one. So
Nice.
yeah, I'll leave it at that for
Okay.
now.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I appreciate that. All right. Well, before we say goodbye, where's the best place for people to follow you and keep up with your gigs? And
Okay, the answer is that it's a work in progress,
Okay.
because I'm trying to wean myself off of Instagram, because I find that I waste too much time on there.
Yeah.
I made a website that's just elizasalem.com,
Okay.
but it's very much under construction, and right now it basically just looks like a Word document that has all my gigs listed on it. But I'm trying to kind of refine that, hopefully, and get it a little more, it's a place where I will post gigs and upcoming stuff and whatnot.
Okay,
So-
cool. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure, so people can keep up with you. And I guess with that, I'll just say thank you so much for your time. We spent, it's been almost 2 hours now.
Yeah.
I'll edit this down, of course, but it was really fun talking, and I'm glad we met last year when you were here in Minnesota, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so touched and honored to be asked to speak about anything, frankly. So it was a pleasure, and it was really nice, unpacking a lot of this stuff with you. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you, and we'll talk to you again.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe on your platform of choice and share it with a friend. You can find the show and a blog at practicingdrummer.com or on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as Practicing Drummer.